The story picks up after the mystery henchman who turned out to be Eddie Brock stabbed Dr. Octavius to death and decided to go after Spider-Man himself. But does he have what it takes to defeat him? Stick around to find out. Jonah has now arrived at the meetup location. He wasn't sure setting a meeting with the Sinister Six was the best option. Hell, he didn't even know what he was doing at this point. The Sinister Six seemed genuinely surprised that Jonah showed up. Jonah turns to see Eddie Brock, and the shock on his face says it all. Jonah couldn't control the shock on his face, expressing his surprise that he was the reporter and the guy who got fired from the Globe. And while he proceeds to ask about Octavius, Eddie Brock cuts him off, quickly spiraling on how Spider-Man is to blame for every bad thing that has been happening in his life. Jonah isn't too pleased to have Brock in the group. He also wasn't happy to find out that he was alone in his reluctance to accept someone who just murdered Doc Ock and took his place in the team. Surprisingly, it wasn't much of a surprise to him. Most of the Sinister Six never really cared about Doc Ock, and combined with the fact that they needed every help they could get in taking down Spider-Man, no one was willing to object. It was just murder after all. The meetup location was on the outskirts of the city. They didn't want to risk anything within the city limits. It was enough that they were trying to pull the biggest stunt of their life, trapping Spider-Man. They couldn't deal with other heroes or the police trying to butt in. The Sinister Six were hoping to turn their seclusion to an advantage. Luring and bombarding him was the key to their victory. All they had to do was lure him to the location and use the power of their numbers to take him down for good. A few miles away, Reeds was working endlessly to find Peter. He had checked everywhere Peter normally would have been and was getting worried with every passing minute. Captain America calls to check in, but Reed explains there is still no news. The symbiote suit was a menace, and 11 people have been murdered. The thought sent chills down his spine. Reed wasn't the only one searching. Johnny was also combing through the city streets, but there was no sign of him. Their only hope at the moment was to wait for the next victim. He just had to be ready. Peter is driving to the outskirts of the city. He has the dead body of Beetles in the back seat. For a minute, he snaps to reality. Peter finds himself in a web of conflicting thoughts. Deep down, all he wanted was to help people, to be the hero they deserved. Yet, he couldn't help but wonder if he was truly making a difference. Almost immediately, the symbiote shoots down the thought, "We're saving lives." With this new clarity, Peter feels he must be doing something right. Just a few miles away, Jonah walks to Brock, telling him to take a break and let him continue, for it was his turn. Brock insists he can't sleep and is fine keeping watch, but Jonah is desperate to understand Brock's motive. Jonah points out that Brock was fired because he accused the wrong person of being Sin Eater, casting doubt on Brock's vendetta against Spider-Man. Truth is, Brock had no one to blame but himself for his life direction. Despite his hatred for Spider-Man, nothing could change the fact that he caught the real killer. But just as the tension rises, Jonah hears a sound coming from the trees. With a flashlight in hand, Jonah cautiously walks toward the sound. Whoa! Hanging in the trees is Beetle's body entangled in Spidey's web. "He's here!" Brock screams behind him. Mysterio, Electro, and the rest of the Sinister Six burst out of the house. Mysterio, the master of illusion, hands out special goggles to everyone. Why? Well, these magical goggles promise to reveal the truth, to help them see reality through activated image inducers. As the goggles flicker to life, the Sinister Six scans the area. Where is he? It was just as if Spider-Man had disappeared. Did he disappear into the forest? Or... The realization immediately dawned on them. Underground! With lightning-fast reflexes, thanks to his new bond with the symbiote, Spider-Man picks through the Sinister Six like he's toying with them. It's almost comical how easy it is for him. He's danced this dance before, defeated each of them in battle, and now he's here to remind them of that fact. The audacity! Peter can't help but taunt them, speaking of how he had restrained himself numerous times from killing them. And then, like a comedic interlude, Eddie Brock steps forward, eager to prove his worth. "You've never fought me before, it'll be different this time." But guess what? He gets a quick reality check as Spider-Man nonchalantly retorts that he does not know who he is. A new spark ignites as the epic showdown between Spider-Man and the Sinister Six rages on. The barn engulfs in flames, casting an eerie glow on the intense chaos. Just at that moment, Kraven caught an opening. He makes the connection that fire must be the symbiote's weakness. Quickly, he screams, "Push him towards the barn!" As Jonah tightly grips Peter, the symbiotic suit starts to sizzle and peel away from Peter Parker's body, revealing his true face. An enormous explosion rocks the barn, sending everyone flying in all directions. Against all odds, Jonah emerges from the chaos, carrying Peter Parker in his arms. The symbiotic suit seems to have vanished into thin air, leaving no trace. Kraven, after seeing all that happened and considering the number of lives lost due to Spider-Man's actions, raises a spear, ready to plunge it into Peter's back. But Jonah delivers a stunning blow to the back of Kraven's head, knocking him unconscious. At that moment, Jonah can't help but wonder why it had to be Peter Parker. Jonah leads Peter to the gateway van. As Peter slowly regains consciousness, he slowly asks Jonah if they're all dead. All except Craven and Eddie Brock, he replied. Flashes of gruesome deeds flood his mind, murders committed by his hands. The weight of guilt begins to consume him. Jonah reminds Peter that he isn't entirely in control. Yet, amidst the chaos and confusion, Jonah finds himself at a crossroads. What's the next move? With the symbiote supposedly turned to ashes in the fire, getting Peter home was the first thing to do. But Peter still felt the darkness. He wasn't sure the symbiote was gone. It couldn't be that easy. At home, Black Cat asks MJ if she's checked in with Peter's normal friends. MJ gets annoyed as she tells Black Cat to stop acting like she is privy to a different Peter. Just as Black Cat responds that there was a reason Spider-Man didn't really tell her who he was, MJ hears a click. "Peter!" she screams. Slightly conscious, Peter apologizes to Mary Jane. MJ is so happy to have Peter back, she doesn't care about what happened in the past. Almost immediately, she remembers that they had bigger problems. Fisk, the notorious mastermind, left behind a chilling surprise, a dangerous ace up his sleeve before he met his demise. There's a single word for a world where everyone knows the secret behind Spider-Man's mask: chaotic. This was Fisk's parting gift for him before dying. The police were already outside Peter's apartment. They mean business and are ready to storm in and capture him anytime. Now here's where things get extremely exciting. While everyone believed the symbiote had met its demise, that sneaky demon was merely playing possum. He cleverly hitched a ride on the van as it sped back into the city. Cunning little creature! The symbiote had learned a fascinating lesson while attached to Peter Parker. Knowledge is power, my friends. And guess who the symbiote stumbles upon? None other than the extraordinary Fantastic Four. Fueled by its lust for power, the symbiote infiltrates the Fantastic Four's ranks. It takes over Reed. As if this is not enough, the symbiote is far from done as he begins breeding an army. You saw how easy it was for the symbiote to work through the Sinister Six like they were absolutely nothing. With Peter's renewed clarity and a real identity out in the world, what next?